Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Saulcast, where we're going to be discussing Season 4, Episode 3, Something Beautiful. My name is Gil, and I'm here with my brother,
Adam. We hope you all enjoyed our instant take for this week's episode. And if you haven't listened to the instant take yet, don't turn this off, but you might want to go back and listen to it because that's just our immediate reaction. This is going to be some more sophisticated analysis, if you will.
Let's get into it.
All right, let's get into it.
$4,000 for each of us, minimum. It's free money.
Kim, is there something wrong?
This is a problem. I'll take care of it.
What difference does it make? Hey!
We open up and just see, a person's hand sticking out the car window, dropping bullet casings on the ground, and I think like little bits of broken glass and stuff. Who knows?
What was the point of dropping that stuff on the ground? I didn't understand.
I think just to make it more realistic that the car was in motion and there was some kind of gun battle happening.
Oh, okay, because when he went and fired at the car, it was after it was already stopped.
Exactly.
So, okay.
And so if all the casings were compressed into one place, it would be less believable.
Okay.
So they're trying to construct the image that the car was being shot at or bullets were being fired out of the car before they hit the road spikes.
Right, okay.
I thought the way that they showed Victor very effectively controlling the car as it was trying to spin out of control after he rode over all those spikes, that was pretty cool.
You know what it reminded me of? Was the comic panel, or the comic that a lot of people post online, of the kid riding a bike and then sticking a stick into the wheel and falling off the bike.
Yeah,
and I couldn't stop laughing.
And then blaming the fact that he fell on something unrelated.
Right. Especially when you see him start to struggle with the wheel as if he's trying to stay on the road. And I'm like, you're the one who put the spikes there.
Yeah. So based on the instant take, it sounds like at that point you already had an idea of what he was trying to do.
Yeah, from the beginning, when he was dropping casings on the road, I knew that this was somebody trying to stage a crime scene. Mm-hmm. And then soon after that, when I saw Nacho was involved, immediately I knew this was to somehow cover up the death of Arturo. What
do you think is their game plan with Nacho?
Good question. So far, they're only using him to cover up the fact that they killed his partner. So obviously they're not getting any real utility. That's just covering up the steps that took to get to Nacho anyway. So they haven't actually gotten any value from him yet.
Well, they're not even covering up the fact that they killed his partner, right? They're just covering up when it and how it happened.
Right. They're giving Nacho a cover story so he can stay in the good graces of the Salamancas. So I guess he's their inside man now.
Right.
What exactly they'll do with that, we'll see. But, I mean, you can imagine that Gus will use this as a way to take more control and take down the family.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's a very calculated move. I think the way that whole thing was simulated is something that only Gus could have thought of. Mm-hmm. I think maybe Walt could have thought of it too, but he would have screwed it up somehow.
Walt would have screwed it up and then somehow got away with it, but some kid would have died or something.
Yeah.
Mike could have gotten away with it for sure.
Definitely.
That he probably would have avoided having to do it to begin with.
That's exactly
He would be doing this on someone else's behalf. They would call him in and be like, "Who did you kill this time?"
Yeah. I like that Mike's becoming a regular guest on this show.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mike. No problem.
We only have to pay him $5 a word. Is there any chance at this point that Nacho comes away from this with a happy ending?
No. I don't. The only reason I think it's possible is because I don't think it's possible, which makes me think maybe the writers have something up their sleeve. Because it seems way too obvious that he's just heading down an inescapable dark path, because we know Gus wins in the end. In this battle between Gus and the Salamancas, we know that Gus wins. And Nacho is on the wrong side of that battle. So I don't see how he comes out of it alive.
Well, he was on the wrong side of the battle, but at this point, Gus owns him, right? Mm-hmm. And if Nacho just cooperates with everything Gus wants, here's one possible outcome I see, and I think this is the one that we're being led to believe right now, is Nacho doesn't have a choice. He's going to have to go along with whatever Gus wants. And I don't even think Nacho will feel guilty about it because he was already trying to take down Hector. Mm-hmm. I think they could just use him up and basically when they're done with him, throw him out. Mm-hmm. Make sure, so that he can never say anything. But maybe that's too obvious.
Yeah, I guess the one route I could see is building off of what you said. Is it possible that Nacho can actually get into Gus's good graces, where he becomes an ally?
I think that's his only hope.
Yeah.
Either that, or he can somehow escape.
Maybe he calls up the vacuum salesman.
Yeah, Ed's vacuum repair. Either that, or I think he's heading to an unfortunate trip to Belize.
Ooh, nice reference.
Thank you.
One more thing about Nacho in this scenario. More and more reminding me of Jesse, and I don't know if the parallel is intentional, but remember towards the end of Breaking Bad, where Jesse was chained up and being forced to cook.
Oh, wow, yeah. I remember that.
So this isn't exactly the same, but very similar, just being held captive and being forced to do whatever crime they're going to be having him do.
Right, he's stuck, and basically there's nothing he can do for himself he can't make any choice for himself without horrendous consequences. Mm-hmm. So I feel for Nacho. After that scene when we see the sequence of him being rescued by the twins, mm-hmm. Did you feel a little something more for the twins this time around than you have before?
Not really. I know that we both observed maybe some very slight emotion from the twins this time around. I think in our instant take, I mentioned that one of the twins, when he found Nacho, I thought I saw something on his face that reflected urgency or concern. So I thought there's a little humanity in there, but I didn't feel anything for the twins.
Mm-hmm. Even when one of them was giving Nacho his blood?
No, because he still looked badass while he was doing it. It just reminded me of scenes in movies where a character gets hurt and then you see them in the bathtub, like extracting the bullet themselves. I didn't see it as him being nice and giving his blood. It was more part of the job.
I see. Right, because he's just acting based on the devotion to family. It doesn't seem like it's particular to Nacho. It's personal in the sense of the family dynamic, but it's impersonal in the sense that it's not for Nacho specifically.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I could see that. I did notice that in this time when we saw, you know how they do that thing with the twins a lot where they cut to their boots and you just see the kind of pointed up boots with the little skulls at the end.
Right.
So I noticed they did it this time. I think in the previous episode when we saw the twins, they were not wearing the boots with the skulls.
In this episode, they weren't wearing them.
In this episode, they were wearing the boots with the skulls. I keep thinking boots with the fur.
Boots with the skulls.
With the skulls. Never mind. Yeah, so I think in this episode they had it, and they did the thing where they do a particular shot on their boots. I think in the previous episode, if I recall, I specifically looked to see if they had skulls on their boots, just because I remember that being their signature, and I didn't think I saw them. I also think they didn't do one of those boot shots. I don't know if there's some kind of if when they have the boots on, the skull boots on, it means something. Probably not, but
yeah,
something I noticed.
I'm just having a hard time tracking your narrative there, because you said they weren't wearing the boots last time, but there wasn't a shot of the boots. So how do you know if they were wearing the boots or not?
Well, because they didn't do a shot where all you see is a close-up. Yeah. The twins were introduced in this episode with a close-up of their boots in the desert.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know that in Breaking Bad, over the seasons, they played a lot with color and the color of people's outfits. I don't remember specifics. I don't know if you
they
do.
played a lot with the appearance too. Like Jesse, he started off wearing a lot of yellow.
Yeah.
Remember? And by the end, he was just black, wearing a lot of black clothing. His head, he had a very close like buzz cut.
Yeah, I haven't paid attention enough to see if they're doing anything similar with color in Better Call Saul, and maybe they're doing something with boots.
Yeah, I think that they definitely pay attention to appearance on this show. This also reminds me of one little detail when Saul is in the car about to go into the fax and copy place. That was last episode, right? Yeah, that was in episode 402. He's in the car and he brushes his hand through his head, and you notice just a little hair come out. He like pulls the hair out and just looks at it and then gets rid of it. Oh, again, they play with those kinds of things a lot on this show. If you look for it.
Yeah. This show makes getting shot really hurt. I feel like most other shows, somebody gets shot and it looks painful, but this show really sells it. Did you see how dry Nacho's lips were?
Yeah.
He was pale. I haven't seen lips that dry since Clint Eastwood walked through the desert in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That's what I thought of when I watched this.
Yeah, I was thinking Nacho should do commercials for chapstick.
Go to the next scene.
Okay. So I love the next scene with Mike and Jimmy in the diner.
Pass.
What? Why?
It's not for me.
Not for you? Is there some problem I'm not seeing, like with the swap or something?
Plan's fine as far as it goes. It's just not for me. And I don't think it should be for you either. I'm sorry about your brother.
Yeah, thanks. But you're really not gonna do this?
Sorry.
We get to see a different side of Mike that I don't think we've seen in a while. He seems to show what looked to me like genuine, as close as Mike can come to friendship, it looked like friendship with Jimmy.
He showed a slight amount of concern. And some of that was, so there's two ways he did that, right? The whole point of the scene is that Jimmy's trying to talk Mike into executing this plan of his to steal the Hummel, the figurine that he spotted in the last episode. And Mike says, it's not for me. And frankly, I don't think it should be for you either. So he's looking out for Jimmy.
Yeah.
And then he also sends his condolences for the passing of Jimmy's brother.
Right. And both of those seemed a little uncharacteristic of Mike. Not in a way that actually conflicts with his character, but in a way that suggests he has some kind of connection to Jimmy now. It seemed like he was basically saying you're above this kind of petty thievery. He's not saying you're above crime, but this kind of thing, $8,000, probably not worth the risk for you. This is small time.
Do you think that's why he was advising against it?
I think there are a lot of elements. So I think he's advising against it because it's, first of all, he knows that Jimmy's brother just died, so he can't be sure that Jimmy's totally thinking straight. This could be a pretty impulsive thing. And also, I think Mike just doesn't see why does Jimmy need to stoop to like petty thievery.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both those things, where Mike recognizes that Jimmy is maybe doing this out of emotion and spontaneity. It's not something he's thought through, and under normal circumstances, he wouldn't do it. And I think Mike recognizes that. So to him, this is a fiery situation. It's not something he wants to be involved in, and he recognizes that it's not a logical choice for Jimmy.
Right. And he also inquires about how did Jimmy even spot this in the first place? Like, what's his relationship with that office? And Jimmy didn't give a straight answer.
Right.
Which I think is also a red flag. I wonder how much conversation Mike has had with Fran, that waitress, because they're at least on a first-name basis, but I just can't imagine they've ever talked in more than 2-word sentences.
Well, I think we've seen their interaction before, right?
I feel like we have, but it must not have been very significant.
I think that maybe this is confirmation bias, but I think I've seen a lot of loner characters in movies. They won't talk to anybody, but they'll have a connection with a waitress at a diner.
That's definitely a trope, yeah.
There's only one other example I can think of, and unfortunately, I don't think you'll know it, and probably nobody listening to this will know it, so I just won't even mention it.
Well, you get oh, all that build-up.
There's a movie that was very limited release. It was on Netflix, I think it still is, called He Never Died. Sort of a horror movie about a guy that is immortal, and he's a loner, but the woman at the waitress knows him. Huh. That movie doesn't exist. I made that up. No, it's real, and it's a pretty good movie. Henry Rollins.
I think that... Oh, okay, Henry Rollins.
Yeah, he was on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, that's how I know him, even though I know he was very famous, for other reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I think the loner waitress dynamic has been well established in a lot of other media, too. After that scene, we then cut back to the twins rescuing Nacho. And I specifically wrote in my notes, Nacho looks like shit.
Yeah. That's what I said, right?
Yeah.
It looks horrible.
Yeah. Whoever did the makeup did an amazing job, because it's not just that his lips were chapped, but people get bags under their eyes or whatever. He just looked like all the life was sucked out of him.
Yeah. It was almost like he didn't even have lips. They were the same color. So I guess you have some medical background.
I like this comes into play every episode.
When you get shot, do your lips turn the same color as the rest of your face? I know that when I watched it, that's what I kept looking at, is I couldn't stop. His lips looked
so what if you want the real medical background? So what's happening is he's going into septic shock. So if you get shot in the abdomen, you're bleeding internally. It's possible you've perforated your bowel too, which means you have all this bacteria spreading throughout your gut, and your body then reacts by basically doing everything it can to conserve all the blood just for your vital organs and your brain and your heart, which means that your skin is getting very little blood, and so you turn all pale. Your lips will no longer look red. Like if you squeeze on someone's fingertip to see how quickly it turns red again, it's just going to stay pale.
Oh, okay.
So he was in shock.
Got it. Septic shock. And that word septic,
that means it's the bacteria from his gut is spreading.
Well, so is that related to like septic tank?
Kind of. Yeah, like a septic tank is like a tank where you allow certain kinds of bacteria to like flourish on all the waste, and it kind of processes it that way. Sepsis and septic, I think that, antiseptic, it just refers to like bacterial growth and that kind of thing.
Oh, thank you.
So his stomach was turning into a septic tank.
Got it. Okay. See, that's when you listen to this, you learn something.
Okay, so the twins rescue Nacho. We talked about this a bit already. They make sure to set that car on fire.
Right.
Get rid of any evidence. So poor Arturo. Arturo is through the ringer now. He gets suffocated. Okay, wait. Think about this. Okay. He gets suffocated with a plastic bag and zip tied, right? Mm-hmm. Then they put his dead... It's like Weekend at Bernie's. Then they throw him into the trunk of a car, take him out to the desert.
With a bunch of ice packs.
With a bunch of ice packs, right. That was one thing I thought was sloppy. Because I know how precise Gus is. But these are just like a bunch of little ice packs you'd get at like a convenience store. And they just kind of let them slosh around in the trunk with his body. I thought they could have at least like stuffed them in his pants and shirt or something.
Yeah.
So then they throw him in the front seat of a car. They shoot him about 100,000 times. Mm-hmm. Then they set him on fire.
Well, they riddle the car with bullets. So a lot of those must have hit him. And then for good measure, they shoot him in the head.
Right. Just in case he wasn't dead yet.
Yeah. It reminds me of something I heard a long time ago, which is that you can tell how much the creators of a show dislike an actor or actress by how brutally they have him or her get killed on the show. I'm not saying that these creators have anything against this character, but it does remind me of another show, which I'm going to spoil, but it is a show that was not watched by very many people from 1995, a sci-fi show called Sliders.
Yes.
And there was one... Wait a minute. This is insane. The character I'm about to talk about was also named Arturo.
Oh, yeah. Professor Arturo.
Professor Arturo. So this is a spoiler, but it's from season 3, which is when the show turned into garbage, so don't worry about it. But the creators of this show, or the writers at the time, actually did hate this actor. They didn't get along with him.
Let's just add, this is...
Professor Arturo, played by John Rhys Davis.
Right, John Rhys Davis. He plays the dwarf in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's a nobody.
Why are you getting so defensive?
He's more of a well, my point is he's more of a somebody than anyone who created that show.
Yeah, exactly. He had more dignity and more... Anyway, I can go off on this the whole rest of the...
We'll save that for our Sliders podcast.
Exactly. But they did not like this actor. And his final episode, they had somebody... I don't even know how else to say it, but they sucked out his brain juice. And he became mentally deficient. And then the planet he was on exploded.
That's a little worse than what happened to Arturo.
Yeah. Yeah. Both Arturos... Things didn't go well for either Arturo.
Let's leave it at that. So, Nacho's loaded up into the car. Twins to the rescue. Mm-hmm. Next, we see Kim. Kim meets to sort out some legal issues. I think it's got to be done pretty quickly before meeting. But the kind of creepy guy who calls her a baby bird with a broken wing.
That's exactly...
really wants to show her these model houses, and takes her to this room with all these kind of funky lights, and it's pretty surreal.
Takes your breath away, doesn't it? Look at this. The whole side of this building is glass, and it's on a north-facing lot. I'm told that's energy efficient, so I'm excited about that.
This is Salt Lake City?
After Provo, why not?
And Cheyenne, Wyoming?
Yep. Over here, North Platte, Nebraska. Now, these two you already know. This one's going to be Ogden, Utah, and this one here is Tucumcari. And over here on this side, you got a few new ones. Sedona, Pueblo, Colorado. And you know what? That's just the tip of the iceberg.
And Kim is clearly in a weird headspace.
Yeah, some ominous music starts playing. She gets distracted. He notices it. Mm-hmm. And then they leave, right?
Yeah. What do you think's going on?
I struggled with this one. My immediate reaction is that she was thinking about Chuck. And I don't know exactly what reminded her of Chuck. It's a little bit of a specious connection, but my thought was that looking at these houses that are going to be built reminded her of the house that was just burned down. But then she stares at this sort of a statue of a man on a horse, and she fixates on that. And then the scene cuts. The guy on the horse, I have no idea. But last episode, the camera fixed on a goldfish. This episode, Jimmy used the goldfish as an excuse to go see the vet. So I think next episode, Kim is going to do something with a guy on a horse.
That is some logic there. Did you map this out on your wall with a bunch of yarn and some tacks?
Yeah. Every time there's an arbitrary fixation on an animal in this show.
And this is not the only time the fish are significant. I've been thinking about this, okay? In the first episode of this season, I also noticed the fish playing an important role when Howard confesses that he believes he drove Chuck to suicide. Now, you remember, Saul says, well, that's just your cross to bear, right?
Right.
What does he do after that?
What does Saul do?
Yeah, what does Saul do?
He gets up and he goes to make tea.
Coffee.
Oh, okay.
What does he do before making coffee?
Does he feed the fish?
He feeds the fish. And it zooms in on the fish and shows it swimming around for a second.
Really? So this is a recurring twice motif. It happened.
Yeah. The fish, there's something to the fish.
Huh. Do you recall the fish playing a role at all in previous seasons?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm going to go back and look for it next time. Maybe I'll make a best of Saul's fish montage.
It's going to be 17 seconds long.
Back to Kim, looking at these model houses. My buddy Casey just caught up to this episode today, and he says he thinks Kim is acting the way that she is because she seemed to be acting pretty normal until the Sandpiper guy came in saying, we have these huge plans to expand. You know, we're going to do this. We need to get these licenses. It's going to be a federal expansion. That's when Kim starts to look really uncomfortable. And he kind of put it in perspective. My friend kind of put it in perspective for me, saying, Kim just got into a horrible car accident just a few weeks earlier because she's been overworked, right?
Oh, okay.
He just finished season 3, and so he has a pretty good perspective on this. He was saying that near the end of season 3, Kim actually talks about how she became a lawyer because she was inspired by the character Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. He's like a dignified lawyer doing really important work, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like she's kind of let down by what her career has turned out to be in comparison to that ideal that she's built up. So there's that. Her mind's already focused on that. She gets into this horrific car accident. She's probably in her head already questioning why she's even doing what she's doing. And so then to be given this on her plate with this massive expansion coming up, maybe she's just realizing, like, why is she doing this? Why is she giving up so much of her life for this job?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Especially if you put it in the context of she's probably thinking about mortality.
Yes.
After Chuck. That feels very right to me.
Exactly. And that is probably why she also broke down reading the letter. It's not just all the sadness, of course, with Chuck's death and Jimmy's relationship with him, but also this was Chuck. He was an amazing lawyer. Like, that's his main legacy that he's leaving behind. And look, he's like gone. He burned to a crisp, and he ended in tragedy. Does she really want to go down the path of devoting herself to the law? Like, it's not like it made Chuck have a fulfilling life.
Yeah, any relationship he had was destroyed.
I think she's feeling existential. It's like, why does she bother?
Yeah, and then that maybe puts into context. Now I want to go back and rewatch that scene. But when she saw the guy on the horse, that could have been a sort of nature being out and doing
like
something.
Riding off into the sunset.
Right.
Okay, so Jimmy goes to the vet for his fish. When he's there, he happens to discuss needing a burglar. I like the vet. I think it's a very funny thing that you just have this vet who has all these connections in the criminal underworld.
Yeah, they're so good at coming up with those little characters. Reminds me of Ed the Disappearer. And in some ways reminds me, I mean, nowhere near as great a character, but of Saul, where you have these small appearances in Breaking Bad, but every time he shows up, it's just funny. And
right. And Saul Goodman, as a character in Breaking Bad, was initially only supposed to be in 3 episodes. So he was just supposed to be this minor little, like, criminal lawyer. Right? The same way you have all these kind of random underworld people.
Yeah. That's one thing that Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul both do so well, is the inner workings of the criminal world. And I don't know how it actually works, but maybe they do have people who pretend to be vets, and you go and see them, and they have jobs for you, or they can connect you with other seedy people.
Right. And the vet guy, for some reason, almost reminds me of, like, a character you would meet during a Grand Theft Auto game.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So I like the vet guy. I think he's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He's also kind of a pushover because Saul just berates him into giving him the phone. Like, his one job is to serve as a go-between, someone who needs a criminal and a criminal who's willing to work for him.
Yeah, it was, give me the phone. No. Come on, give me the phone. All right, fine.
Yeah. So Jimmy somehow manages to convince the burglar, like, right away to do this job for him. I think basically he says this is the easiest $8,000 you'll ever make.
Yeah.
Turned out to not be so easy, but Jimmy couldn't have predicted that.
Now I'm going to connect some dots that you probably missed and a lot of people listening maybe didn't pick up on. But you kind of glossed over it, but how did Jimmy convince the guy to go along with it? He talked about his colon. He said, "Do you shit gold?" And he goes, "Well, then I don't understand this, because unless you've got some gold nuggets in your colon right now, this is the easiest 10 grand you're ever going to make." Yeah. So colon, who else has problems with their colon right now?
Nacho. And he is at that very moment about to enter the vet's office, or about to show up at least on their doorstep. That's funny. I did not pick up on that. Here's another thing you might not have picked up on, sir. Did you recognize the burglar?
No. Wait, have we seen this burglar before?
We've seen this burglar before.
Where?
Do you remember Vamonos Pests?
Yeah.
From Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Do you remember what their side job was?
No.
Vamonos Pest, which sets up those tents around houses in Albuquerque. They do some extermination, and then they steal from the houses at some point. Another way they make money is they just sell alarm codes, and they also sell like duplicate keys that they made of these houses. One of the people in charge of Vamonos Pests is named Ira, who is the same person that Jimmy hires to steal from the copy place.
That's really funny because, and we mentioned this in our quick take the other day, but every time on this show, anybody mentions, "Oh, we've got to get a burglar," or "We got to get somebody for this," "Oh, I better call somebody up." Anytime they make reference to a character and you don't know who it is right away, I always ask myself, "Oh, are we looking at a Breaking Bad cameo here?"
Yeah. And so we were both trying to wonder which Breaking Bad character that person would be. Mm-hmm. We were both wrong and both said, "Oh, okay, we've just never seen this guy before." And it turns out it was a Breaking Bad character, just neither of the ones we thought it was. And both of our guesses were about as wrong as they possibly could be. I thought it was Huel at first.
I thought it was Jesse.
Yeah. I can't imagine two more opposite people.
Honestly, Walter White's son would have been a better guess than Jesse.
Here's a question. Do you think we're going to see Ira again? Because if so, that opens up a lot of interesting doors.
I would have thought that, yes, we're going to see him again. Now that I know he's a Breaking Bad character, for some reason that makes me think it was more of a one-off fun cameo. I guess it wasn't really if most people probably wouldn't even recognize him from Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they brought him in just for the purpose of, obviously they didn't bring him in just for that reference. I don't know. I could see it going either way. It could be funny to see Jimmy form another relationship with somebody where they just do these little odd jobs similar to him and his old partner. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, what I'm wondering is, at this point, is Vamonos Pest even in existence? Right? Because this is a little while before Breaking Bad. And if so, is Ira involved with them? Because if Ira's involved with Vamonos Pest and they're around and they're already doing their criminal activity, then this could be a great entryway for Saul to get into more organized crime.
Right. I think we were both thinking that when Jimmy called up Mike for this job, Mike was going to take it, and we even commented on how funny it was that Mike and the Jimmy storylines have been so separate for the last 2 seasons, and this little job was going to bring them together. So clearly that's not what happened. But maybe this has to be more than just a job, right, where he makes 10 grand. I imagine it has a greater plot purpose. So maybe he does step into something larger through, what's his name, Ira. Maybe Ira introduces him to some bigger criminal element.
Right.
And like we originally thought, it's not him and Mike, but it is a linchpin for something greater.
Yeah. I wonder if Todd would be too young in the timeline at this point to make an appearance.
Todd. Oh, Todd from the neo-Nazis.
Yes, because he worked for Vamonos Pest.
Oh, okay.
He's the he was like a psychopath.
Oh, it would be great if he made an appearance.
Yeah.
Did Jimmy ever interact with him?
I'm not sure.
Or Saul?
I feel like we would have remembered if they already had a relationship. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to guess we're not going to see Todd. I also think he would probably be too young at this point in the series.
Yeah, he would be pretty young.
Yeah. But it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Then the vet gets called urgently to go help Nacho. And great scene, really well done. You see him working on Nacho, but it keeps fading to black.
Right, it's sort of shot in a way from Nacho's perspective.
Mm-hmm. Right, and yeah, so you see the vet's face kind of hovering over him, like behind the mask, and he's injecting his shoulder. Like we've mentioned before, you see the twin, one of them giving blood directly. Gives Nacho a bunch of antibiotics, so that's what you would want to do in the case of sepsis. Then what I really liked was the vet seemed to not want the twins to hear what he was saying in Nacho's ear. He says into his ear, "I never want to see you again." And he says, "This cartel shit is too hot for me."
Yeah.
Which I just thought was a great line.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Because I felt the same way. Remember I was saying in the last episode, I'm so glad I don't work in the drug business.
Yeah.
It's too dirty. Everyone's always mad at each other all the time. So I would feel the same way.
Right, and it's not like this guy isn't also a vet. He really is seeing people with sick animals too. And it seems like he likes to just kind of dip his toes in the criminal underworld and just connect people.
Yeah.
Right? Now he's dealing with gangbangers and people who are dying. That's too much. Mm-hmm. It just adds an interesting twist to the vet character. I know he's not the most prominent character, but I do hope we see more of him.
Yeah, he's a pleasure to watch.
Yeah.
And just watching him take care of Nacho, but all of it is done through the veneer of just anger.
Yeah.
He's like, you're going to want to get that checked out or you'll die. All right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to see you here again.
Yeah, that was great. Okay. Next we see one of the funniest Better Call Saul sequences, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. The burglar trying to steal the Hummel figure. So he goes in, everything is smooth sailing, but the fact that they're showing every step of it means something's going to go wrong. As I'm watching it, I keep trying to think, okay, something's going to happen. Something's going to go wrong. Maybe this burglar's an idiot. He's going to make a mistake, right? So he puts the figures down. He kind of looks at one and looks at another. And I'm like, oh, no, he's going to replace the wrong one, right? But it looks like he compares them. And I'm like, okay, I think I just saw him take the right one. Mm-hmm. Whew, we're fine. Then you hear a toilet flush. And this sad sack boss comes out. And the instant that the boss he comes out in his boxers, mm-hmm. and you see he's got set up on the couch, he pissed off his wife.
Yeah. Right. So this made me think of one of the original concepts for Better Call Saul was that maybe it should be a 30-minute sitcom. And if they did go that route, I could easily see this having the entire episode would be that office.
That would be amazing.
It was handled so well.
That'd be like the Seinfeld episode when they're waiting in the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, one of those single location episodes.
Or when they're stuck in the parking garage.
Or The Fly in Breaking Bad, where it all took place in the lab.
Imagine a whole episode taking place under that guy's desk while he's eating pizza.
There's so much good stuff to talk about in this scene.
Yeah.
So what was he listening to the whole time? Yeah,
okay, so what I loved is as soon as you hear the audiobook, which it's such a sad picture because it's this loser in his office in his boxers, but he's listening to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People on audio. Mm-hmm. And I recognized it because I've listened to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People on audio.
I was going to say, because we didn't hear a whole lot from it. Mm-hmm. There's like 12 words.
I recognized the voice right away, and I just thought it was so ironic.
The thing that really stood out to me in this scene is at a certain point, he gets up and he makes a phone call to order pizza. Mm-hmm. And the conversation, are you thinking of the same thing as me? He goes, large cheese. Yeah, I want it sliced. Have you ever called a pizza place and they asked you if you wanted the pie sliced?
No, that was funny. I did not pick up on that.
I started to wonder if that was
like a regional thing?
No, I was thinking like a period piece type of thing. It takes place in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Did they used to not always slice pizza back then?
I have to imagine that pizza's been being sliced ever since it was invented.
Yeah.
I think that was just added humor.
I think that it wasn't in the script and the actor insisted on saying it.
If so, kudos to that actor because that's hilarious.
Yeah.
But for me, in general, though, with the food, it's like the guy sitting under the desk and when he picks up the phone, your mind's thinking like, what's the, what could be happening right now? And the worst comes true. Where it's like, oh no. Now he's ordering food. Like, he's going to be awake for a while.
Right.
And he just pours himself some more liquor.
And you see the guy hiding under the desk, and he sort of makes like, oh, come on.
It's worse than that. He looks like he's going to start crying.
He just doesn't want to be
He's like,
there.
oh my God, no.
And then there's a moment where the guy leaves, probably to use the bathroom or something, and the burglar, I want to say his name, Ira. So Ira gets out from under the desk, and he quickly calls Jimmy. He's like, you got to get me out of here, man. This guy's here. He's dug in for the night.
And then when the boss is having an argument with his wife, it sounds like he got his wife a birthday gift or something like that, and he can't understand why she's upset that her gift is a vacuum cleaner.
It's top of the line.
Top of the line. It was very expensive.
I'm kind of on his side for this one.
And that's why you're alone. That's a good way to end the episode.
Yeah.
Right, so I just find the boss character funny.
Yeah, the boss character was funny. The boss character, I actually think he's a comedic actor in real life.
I could
some
totally
sort
see
of
that.
relation to
That
comedy.
would add credibility to your theory that he ad-libbed the line about the wanting it sliced.
You can't say the thing about slicing. All right, I won't say it this time. Yeah, I want it sliced.
I like the way Jimmy comes through for him. He's persistent. So first you hear the car alarm go off, and of course it doesn't work. The boss just sticks his head out and pushes the button. The car alarm stops. Mm-hmm. Then Jimmy manages to break into the car and actually just put it in neutral and let it start rolling away.
When Jimmy was on his way to the office, did you have a theory on what his plan was to get Ira out?
I knew he would make a diversion, for sure. As he was starting to stand, like, as I knew he was arriving outside, I thought, okay, maybe he'll, like, break a window open or make some kind of noise. I didn't particularly think about the car alarm. Mm-hmm. What did you think?
Well, I usually, when I watch Better Call Saul or any show, while I watch it, I try to be sort of passive. I don't like to try and guess what's going to happen next. But sometimes a thought will just pop in. But because I haven't put much thought into it, it's not necessarily... I just want to say that I didn't actually think this was going to happen.
You're prefacing something stupid you're about to say.
I thought he was going to call in a bomb threat. I don't even know who he'd be calling the bomb threat to, but I thought...
I'm going to bomb this coffee machine office. I mean, it is kind of like the go-to idea of a diversion classically. Mm-hmm. So it's not the worst idea.
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing to think. It would be a terrible idea.
Right.
Yeah.
No, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't
all
be
right,
like...
all right, we're off the hook now.
Okay.
But it's not, I could see why instinctively your mind might go there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But it was stupid.
I thought he was going to get Jesse to help him.
Jesse and Huel are going to show up. He lets the car roll away. Ira finally gets to escape. And we touched on this in the instant cast, but it's like no big deal. Like I think they both kind of had fun getting through the situation.
Hey, so did you get it?
Shit and gold.
Yeah, right?
I didn't say it was easy. Carson was pretty slick. I don't know how you pulled that off.
Worked though, didn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, when Ira walked out, my first thought was, that bag he's carrying looks pretty full. And so I thought maybe he was so pissed at having to go through that whole ordeal, he just stole all the figures. And then Jimmy was going to be screwed because it would be obvious that the figurines were gone.
Yeah, I thought there's no way that things will work out between the two of them.
Right.
Right? Because, first of all, he's never met this guy before. Mm-hmm. Just a random criminal. And this guy has every reason in the world to be pissed off at Jimmy. Mm-hmm. And yet, they come out and they're just both like, hey, that was a close one.
Yeah, Ira says, nobody said it would be easy.
Yeah.
And he's a professional. My other thought was that he was going to refuse to give Jimmy his half. Mm-hmm. But no, they got along, and it was a feel good scene when they left. It was
that's
great.
what you want to see. Like when you're watching this show or you're watching Breaking Bad, like the one consistent feeling I have through the entire show is like, like why can't anything just go work well, or like things might go fine, but some idiot or some jerk criminal has to get an edge or steal a little on the side and ruin everything.
Right. We need 6 kilos. 5 isn't enough.
Right. Or Jesse has to steal a little bit of the meth from Gus's operation, which was just so stupid considering how much money he was making off of it. Right. So when you see something like this and like they actually have a reason to be pissed at each other and yet they're getting along, that felt great to watch. What is it that Ira said again?
Nobody said it would be easy.
Nobody said it would be easy. And then Jimmy goes, it worked though, didn't it? Right? They're just having fun.
Yeah.
So that was great to see. Next, we cut to a scene in which Gus is talking with his boss. So I think Gus is one step removed from Don Eladio. Mm-hmm. And then there's this intermediary Don. Did
you confirm his name?
It's Don Juan something. So
it really is Don Juan.
Yeah, but he doesn't just call him Don Juan. There's a last name to it that I keep forgetting.
Okay.
They're talking on the phone. They're short on supply, right? So Gus's boss is encouraging him to find a local supplier, even though Gus objects, saying that Don Eladio would not approve. Mm-hmm. This is the moment where I started to get excited because I knew who we were about to see. Gil.
Right.
What a way to introduce him with the Elements song.
Yeah. Yeah. And I knew it was going to be a Breaking Bad character. Again, they had the build up of we need to get a local supplier. When we started hearing him sing the Elements song, for some reason I didn't recognize his voice at first, but it took about 5 seconds and it clicked.
I think it's easy to forget kind of how high pitched it is.
Mm-hmm. I'm so kind of glad that they brought him back, though.
Yeah, because his character didn't. He was such a good character, and I think well cast also, and so for him to be snuffed out like that, it didn't do full justice to the potential his character had.
Right, and they did a good job of making you like him very quickly, so his death would hit you pretty hard.
Yeah.
But it's nice that they put in the character work, they made you like him, and now we get to spend some more time with him.
Right, and that's, I think, a recurring theme with this show is we're taking characters that, Breaking Bad was so well done that it didn't suffer from the problem a lot of shows have, which is they build up such good characters that almost all sense of danger is lost because they're like, well, they're not going to kill that guy off because he's just so important to the show, right? But Breaking Bad could create so many good characters that we were invested in that they could afford to kill some of them and drive the plot forward in a really hard-hitting way without sacrificing the overall quality of the show that came from these great characters. And now we get the best of both worlds because not only did they allow the plot to progress in the most intense way possible in Breaking Bad, but now we get to enjoy these characters in an earlier time.
Mm-hmm. It made me think about Breaking Bad in a little bit of a different way than how I've thought about it previously, because we keep spending time with groups of characters who are all dead in the modern Breaking Bad timeline. And it made me think all these people would be fine. Gil's just running little experiments, singing to himself, having a good time. And then Walter White, like a bulldozer, just careens through all these people's lives. And I know that's so much of what Breaking Bad was about, is, the consequences and how many people are destroyed from this one person's ego and just crazy pursuit of something. And just made me think about it in that way. And then it's just interesting that you can tell these two different stories, Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, that have different themes and they're about different things, but they both intersect in the same world. Just it gave me an appreciation for the storytelling. Maybe look at Breaking Bad a little bit differently.
Well, what it does is it shows you. So you watch Breaking Bad and you're like, okay, Walt produced so much chaos and ruined so many people's lives. But this gives you a whole new level of understanding of it and the complexity that was there and everything that was brewing before Walt even showed up. All these, every one of these characters has their own motivations and drives and their own life and families that they're looking out for. Mm-hmm. And then Walt shows up and topples everything. If not for who knows what would have happened, but we can at least say that because of Walt, Hank gets killed, Gus gets killed, Gale gets killed, all the people on that airplane get killed.
Hector
gets Gus would have eventually killed Hector. True. Probably, but right. So the Salamancas would have all been killed anyway because that was Gus's goal, right? But Gus's need for revenge gets ruined, which I wouldn't have felt bad about during Breaking Bad, but now I feel bad knowing that this was Gus's primary motivation in life, and it was taken from him. And not only that, but in his last moment of life, he realized that it was gone. It'd be one thing if he got he had the satisfied feeling of like, aha, I just injected Hector with the final poison that will kill him after I got to hold the necklace of his murdered family member right in front of him and drop it in his pocket, and torment him like that. He gets to kill him. It'd be one thing if that happened and then Gus gets instantly snuffed out. Because at least he lived the last moment of his being was that feeling of satisfaction. But instead, it was his realization that his plans were ruined and that they were both going to die. Remember that last second? He screams, "No!" at the top of his lungs. And then when you rewatch that scene, that explosion was insanely powerful. Mm-hmm. And Walt built that bomb. Remember?
Yep.
You see the door blow off of that room at like the speed of a bullet. It hits the other side of the building. And I know this is a different show now, but it's a great scene.
Yeah, when you start thinking about that scene, it just overtakes your mind.
Yeah,
it was so powerful.
And now it's even more powerful because Gus is becoming a real character to us.
Yeah, it's like in Breaking Bad, we got to see all these lives get ruined, and now we get to see those lives.
Yeah,
before they got ruined.
Right. I love the way Gus and Gale interact. It's kind of like a father-son sort of dynamic. Mm-hmm. Similar to what Walt had with Jesse a little bit, but Gus and Gale wear it a lot better. Mm-hmm. They're much classier and friendly about it.
It's pretty funny how I think transparent it is to us, sort of what Gus is doing. Obviously, Gus wants Gale at some point to cook for him. And, Gale is basically begging for it.
Yeah.
And Gus is like, you're not ready. Not yet, not yet. Come on, I want to make meth.
Gus is playing hard to get.
Yeah.
He's being a tease. Mm-hmm. It's funny because Gale wants to do it just because he's a nerd. It almost feels like he just wants to do it because of devotion to Gus. Mm-hmm. Didn't it seem that way?
He really respects Gus, and he looks up to Gus. You said father-son. My immediate read of it was more starstruck. Like, oh my God, Gus is here. I need to impress him.
Yeah, I could see that. Gus asks what Gale is doing with that setup there, and he says he's making some kind of like benzodiazepine precursor, which basically he is already working with like psychotropic drugs.
Did you understand what?
Not exact. I mean, I don't know precisely what he's doing, but I know benzodiazepine, that's just like the class of drugs. It's like Xanax and anti-anxiety drugs, that people abuse. It's also just used, pharmaceutically. So I think he's doing legitimate research on those things. He wouldn't be doing it out in the open like that. But it shows you he's already working in that field of chemistry.
Right.
But then Gus asks what he's doing. So he says, I wouldn't want to bore you. And Gus says, oh, you wouldn't. He could just be flattering Gale. It would make perfect sense that Gus was doing that. And Gus is also very, very good at acting, and just putting on a false persona. He's doing it pretty much all day. But he did legitimately seem interested to me, and it would be in line with what we know about his character, which is how meticulous he is. Mm-hmm. His partner, early on, his partner's job was to cook. So he probably knew a lot about it. He would like to gain more insight into the chemistry, and I'm sure he already knew a lot about it, especially after we see the way he's looking at all those medical records for Hector in the other episode. I think Gus is like a super genius.
Yeah, for sure. I think he was conveniently genuinely interested. I think probably inside he doesn't really know if he really cared that much or not, but it all gets conflated with the fact that he knows it's good to have this relationship with Gale. Yeah. So he's going to put on an interest in whatever Gale's doing, but he does seem to have pretty strong intellectual curiosity.
Yeah, which I respect that about him. Mm-hmm. What do you think about Gus telling Gale Gil's begging to start cooking for Gus, and Gus says, "You were meant for better things."
Yeah, what's the game plan here? Because Gus says that they're going to run out, local dealers are going to run out of supply in a week, he said, right? Mm-hmm. So he needs more meth in the next week. So what's the holdup here? What is his... there's no question he wants Gil to cook for him, right?
Right. Yeah, what's the alternative?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I don't know what the game plan here is.
Yeah, I mean, I know he said that, when he was talking with his boss, it seemed like the boss was also going to be working on it, right? So maybe he wants to have Gil there as a last resort, but first make sure that they don't have any other options. Mm-hmm. That's one possibility.
Right.
And I think in part it's because Gil is like an investment for him. Mm-hmm. And who knows, maybe part of him does feel some affection toward Gil, in the sense that he doesn't want to involve Gil in all this unless he absolutely needs to. Mm-hmm. It's possible because Gil might remind him of his former partner. Like we said before, his former partner was a cook too.
Mm-hmm. I think that Gus is too. I think there's a practical reason.
I think the practicality and the business mentality would take precedence.
Yeah, I think maybe Gus sees a risk factor there. Doesn't Gil say, I could make it here, nobody would even notice? Mm-hmm. Gus might think that Gil can do it really well, but he might not be as good at keeping a low profile as he needs to be.
Right. Even just suggesting that he cooked the meth there, that sounds reckless.
Yeah. So he might have just stopped in more as a just check in, make sure I've still got Gil in my back pocket as a plan B.
Yeah.
That might be all that was.
I think so. I think it's just building up that connection there, mm-hmm. and also kind of letting us in on the fact that this is brewing.
Right.
But I don't think Gil will be cooking for him right this second.
Yeah, agreed.
My next note just says, "What's Kim's deal?"
Kim's talking to her assistant. Has her assistant write something to follow up from the sandpiper meeting. They go back to the office. Jimmy comes out in his pajamas. Makes a whole scene of it. So it's a law office. I'm wearing pajamas. Look at me.
Yeah, and Kim is just seems again very preoccupied, and she's like, you know what? Maybe you actually can draft that document. And she has been hard to read for the past couple of episodes. Okay, so next we have another scene that is, as usual, simultaneously hilarious and heartbreaking. This is when Kim hands Jimmy the letter that was in Chuck's will. And so we both talked about what we thought might be in the letter, in the instant take. I said that, if I had to guess, I would think it would be something kind of cold. Mm-hmm. Not cruel in any way, but just formal, more formal than you would expect from family. And you, one thing I noticed that you do, you did it multiple times.
Yeah.
And you did it about this letter, is you'll ask me, you'll ask me, what did you predict, before this happened, what did you predict was going to happen? And I'll give you an answer, and I'll say, I thought this was going to happen. It turned out I was wrong. What you do is you say, yeah, that thing that happened, that's pretty much what I thought would happen. Yeah, you even said, this is one thing you said, okay, which I think is ridiculous. You said, leading up to it, I didn't really have any predictions about what would be in the letter, but if I were to have a prediction, it would have looked like that.
That's true. That's true. I remember saying that.
Yeah.
I said, well, if I were to make a prediction, I probably would have predicted that.
Did you realize how...
No, I didn't realize it at the time. I do remember saying something pretty stupid where I said, what would you write in a letter besides something that you don't say? Or something.
Wait, well, I actually thought that was good.
Oh, really?
You said, yeah, what kind of thing would you put in that sort of letter besides those sorts of things which went unspoken? Yeah, I thought that was insightful.
Yeah, I actually heard a statistic earlier today that 95% of people said that there are certain things they'll say in a text message that they aren't willing to say in real life. And this is the same thing. There are certain things that Chuck is willing to put in a letter that he wouldn't say in real life.
Right. I agree. I did read some fan theories and speculation that this letter was not written by Chuck. That it was in fact written by Kim. That maybe the real letter was just too cruel and disgraceful. I don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't buy that at all.
Because she already knew that Jimmy was disinterested in all of this stuff. You know, he was really not reacting to any of the Chuck business at all. I think if Kim, first of all, she wouldn't have opened the letter without Jimmy's permission. But even if she did and she read how bad it was, she would have just hidden it or gotten rid of it, knowing that Jimmy would never inquire about it.
Right, and if she were going to write a fake letter, I mean, anybody could read that letter and know that it was not going to make Jimmy feel good.
Yeah. So I call shenanigans on that theory, but I'm just throwing it out there. It seems pretty popular.
I don't know what that says about
the fan base.
Well,
to any of our listeners who believe that theory, this isn't,
I don't mean to put you down.
Yeah. But you did a little bit.
A little bit.
But not too much. No. Not enough that you won't come back.
Please.
Yeah, we need you. So the letter. It was a pretty good letter, I thought. Pretty warm.
I think
if I were in Jimmy's shoes, but I actually, I missed Chuck and I felt bad about a lot of things, I would have had conflicting feelings. The letter would have made me feel cared about in a way that he didn't express before. It also would have made me feel very guilty for some of the cruelty I might have had toward him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the letter would have... there's really only two ways you can interpret that letter. You can interpret it as either A, disingenuous. He was just saying that stuff because he felt like he was supposed to say it and no other real reason. So that's, of course, not going to make Jimmy feel good. The other way to read it is that the letter was written a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And what that tells Jimmy is that at one point he had Chuck's respect and he's totally screwed it up since then.
Right.
So there's no positive read on that letter from Jimmy's perspective.
Right. And I agree. I think it must have been written a while ago and just never been updated. Mm-hmm. And so what this is showing is just the stark contrast between how Chuck may have once respected Jimmy and how it totally fell apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, now that we're talking about it more, I don't think it was a genuine letter. I mean, I don't think he meant it in a genuine way. Mm-hmm. Because if you listen to him, I think last season, my impression is that Chuck never wanted Jimmy to be a lawyer.
Yeah. Because
he knew him as Slippin' Jimmy from the beginning. And what was the line? Monkey with a machine gun?
Yeah, monkey with a machine gun. Gorilla with a machine gun.
Yeah, and that's not a belief he came to after Jimmy became a lawyer. Mm-hmm. Right? He knew that from the start.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know what? Chuck did misrepresent himself all the time. I think he did lie a lot, just not in any kind of way, not in any legal setting, but in the sense of he distorted the truth all the time as a weapon against Jimmy.
Okay, so the letter might have been a distortion of the truth, or when he told Jimmy that he never wanted him to be a lawyer, that might have been a distortion.
Yeah, I think it's hard to know which.
He might be rewriting history a little bit.
Yeah, and it could be. I think in all, not few things are really that black and white. I think ultimately, Chuck relied on Jimmy heavily because of his mental illness. Jimmy was. Remember how every single day, like Jimmy would have to bring Chuck, the newspaper. He'd have to leave his phone in the mailbox. He would have to bring him food.
True.
Right? If Chuck really had such strong feelings against Jimmy, he didn't need to rely on Jimmy. Mm-hmm. He was wealthy enough to pay, someone else to handle all that.
Right.
So I think his feelings are probably quite mixed. Mm-hmm. And was he rewriting history or was the letter fake? It's probably a mixture.
Right, and in the end, for Jimmy, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Either way, it's bad news.
Either way, Jimmy's going to keep eating his cereal.
Yeah.
I sincerely admire your energy and resilience. I used to worry about you finding a place in the world, but I'm not worried about that anymore. I'm certain now that no matter what the future may bring, you'll land on your feet, and I hope when you read this, you remember me not only as your brother, but as a person you knew was always in your corner. Beside it's just Chuck. Well, say what you want. A man could write a letter.
Sorry.
Hey.
No, I didn't mean to make it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's a nice letter.
And that's what was great about the scene.
New paragraph. Oh, he didn't sound angry like that, though. It was like more like new paragraph.
Yeah, true. He didn't sound... He had zero emotional inflection whatsoever when he was reading that letter. Mm-hmm. He seemed to be enjoying a cereal. That's what I took away from it.
The man can write a letter.
Yeah, that was his only reaction. The cereal was so funny.
Yeah, that whole scene was hilarious.
Yeah.
The cereal took it to one level, and then when he kept saying new paragraph, that took it to the next level.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Kim is like breaking down in tears, and when the letter's over, she has to like run away basically. And Jimmy seems somewhat concerned, but he's really for two people who live together and are seemingly quite close. He really didn't seem to care that she was upset.
Well, he seemed confused.
Yeah.
Which is really bizarre because either Jimmy is pretending to be happy and positive instead of mourning, or he's really feeling this as a defense mechanism maybe. But either way, you think he would understand why Kim's upset. But he seems genuinely confused. Like, what's the big deal? It's a stupid letter. What's the problem?
Right, yeah. So I find his demeanor... he's been confusing me since the season started.
Yeah. And we talked earlier this week about how we're in the bag for this show. We love this show. We never criticize it. And when we consider theories about what's going on, we never consider another option, which is is the writing a little bit off? Or is it just we don't understand what's happening with Jimmy right now?
Yeah. I think it's far more likely that we just don't understand.
Just wanted to throw it out. Yeah. I just want to maintain some credibility, so I'm throwing it out there.
Right. Well...
I feel bad for even saying it.
Yeah, don't bring that in here. Yeah. Well, our homework, like we discussed on the instant take, we said we're too complimentary.
Yeah, true.
We need to have some edge. Mm-hmm. We need to show that we're capable of some critical thinking.
Right.
And so the assignment was to bring in one criticism of this show.
Yeah. So some of you in the LA and New York area might be aware that Postmates is currently running a promotion where if you order online, you can actually get a free delivery of Los Pollos Hermanos chicken. And it comes in a box with some French fries, some fried chicken, some Pollos Hermanos fried chicken, and promotional material. Now, I, myself, did not actually try any of that chicken. But while I was at work, my brother ordered some. And he told me that it wasn't very good. He said that Gus would be disappointed.
Oof. Scathing.
Mm-hmm. So, they can write a show. But chicken was a little dry. And the fries were a little soggy. Did not feel good saying that.
We should cut that out. We'll cut that out.
Cut that part out, yeah.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter at SaulCastPod on Twitter. One word, SaulCastPod. This is where we can engage with you, okay? You'll be able to ask us any questions. If we get something wrong, you can yell at us. You can agree with us. We encourage agreement. Mm-hmm. If you have anything positive to say.
I want to hear, I want to engage with the listeners. And even if you hate the show, if you think that this is terrible, I want to hear about it.
Yeah, tell us. See what happens. Or if you want to email us, that's saulcastbros@gmail.com.
saulcastbros@gmail.com. Send in your questions, criticisms, compliments, requests. Thanks everyone for listening this week. My brother and I have only done a few episodes so far, but we've really been enjoying having these conversations, and we've been seeing every episode has a few more downloads than the last one. And the more that you spread the word, the more people listen, the more encouragement it is for us to keep recording. And now we're talking about doing a couple episodes a week with the Instant Take, and we've discussed maybe doing some character profiles, because you can see as we go through these episodes, there's a lot of questions about Gus's motivation, and we could do a whole episode just looking back at Breaking Bad episodes and trying to draw some connections that it's hard to do if you just focus on the current episode. So keep listening, give us some feedback, and we'll keep doing our best to give you some solid analysis and some good content. Thank you. I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
And this is Saulcast.
Yeah.
Better call Saul. Or Jimmy.
Call Jimmy.
Yeah. Shouldn't have had all that pollo.